Hi, it's lovely to meet you. Who are you?
Hi, my name is Wienke Giezeman. I'm initiator of the Things Network, a global Internet of Things network that's built out of individuals and businesses that collaboratively build telco infrastructure for things.
Why is it special?
So I think there are two ways how it's special. First of all, it's a new breed of telco infrastructure and telecommunication infrastructure that allows sensors to talk to the internet. And the main business case driver of this technology is that it's low power. So placing sensors around a city, around a building, that you want to wirelessly connect somehow to the internet so you can analyze the data. And so now it's been very hard because the technologies so far on the market did not allow the sensors to last on a battery for very long, making the operational cost of maintaining such a network very high. Now we have this new technology called LoRaWAN. It's a low power wide area network technology, and what it allows to operate in an open space of the spectrum. So it's in an open like just like Wi-Fi. Everybody can set up the infrastructure, and it's fairly low cost. Because of this technology, we thought, okay, this is also possible to build a collaborative network with this. So if people set up these gateways to monitor their buildings, to monitor their cities, why don't we let them collaborate together globally to build a global network? So imagine that, for instance, a city wants to know the fill rate of the trash cans, sets up a network. But somebody else might have a use case where he builds smart mouse traps that notify the facility management company whenever a mouse is caught. This can all operate on the same network because it's an open standard and open spectrum. It's very easy for them to collaborate, and we created a platform to enable that collaboration.
You started with Amsterdam. Can you talk to us about how you got the whole project up and running?
So it just started as a crazy idea at a meetup, and then we gathered a group of people. We created the software. We found 10 businesses in Amsterdam that wanted to invest in the physical infrastructure that consists out of gateways. These are physical devices that have an antenna. You can compare them to a Wi-Fi router, but it doesn't use Wi-Fi. It uses LoRaWAN. It's a different frequency. It's a different protocol, but it goes over the air. And we launched the network in 6 weeks. We open sourced the code to how we did it. We opened up the knowledge, and we opened up the platform for anybody to join. And after that, we got response from all around the world for people that want to get started with this technology. And since then, that was the end of 2015. Now, in a bit more than 2 years, we've grown out to 3,400 gateways across more than 90 countries with a developer ecosystem of 35,000 developers.
I'm a consumer and a business owner, and where do I start to use your network?
I would go to the thingsnetwork.org/map
Uh-huh.
and see where there's a place near you. So I don't know where you live. What's the area that you live?
London.
London. So
I'm
basically in
okay
London.
then.
Huh?
I'm okay if I'm in London.
Yeah, you're probably fine when you're in London, but you can find an air spot. So next step, what we always say is that do something with it that generates value, right? So get into the use case. We're pushing technology, and it's the ecosystem that generates the applications that generate value. So we end up go to our website, learn what the technology can do. First step is that you can buy either a gateway yourself or only a development device if somebody else in your neighborhood already has a gateway. And then just you can start tinkering and see if you can make something that generates value. And this is actually what we see independent of if you're a maker and you're doing this in the weekend, if you're a small business or a startup and you see a problem and you want to solve it with IoT, or if you're an enterprise. Because everybody's now looking how to leverage this technology, and doesn't matter if you're a $1 billion company or if you're at home, That's the beauty of open technology, and that's the beauty of all the open technology we use. I mean, the biggest example is Linux. Linux started in a basement, and 5 years later it was bigger than Microsoft on the server side. Yet it's still a platform that anybody that wants to run it as a hobby project on a Raspberry Pi uses, and the largest enterprises all use it. So that's a bit of the pattern you see with open technology. That's also what we see on our network right now. We see a lot of professional use cases, businesses that build their network on top of the Things Network infrastructure. Because of its easy way to get started, its low cost, and its open nature. So if you build an application that involves any IT components, you always are looking at the least vendor lock-in as possible, right? So you don't want to be surprised by a vendor that is doubling their prices while you're running a service, right? So basically also with open technology, it allows you to be more freely and independent of your vendors with your product.
Can you talk about the physical products that you are selling from the website? You spoke about the gateway, but just explain to the audience about the physical products.
Yeah, so we have on the hardware side, we have 3 products. We have a gateway that allows to create network coverage. Then we have a node called the Things Node. It's a product that allows you to set up a proof of concept or some kind of prototype, and that sensors are already pre-packaged in that device. And actually, you don't only need software skills to get started. And with we have an Arduino-based development board that's way more extendable, and that's really for building elaborate proof of concepts. And on the other side, we have cloud products. So we have our network server that allows the devices and the gateways to be managed, and then we provide all kinds of integrations to build your dashboard, or to build a control system, or to build something that you can actually analyze and control the data.
On your company video, you say, "You're the network, let's build it together." Your website, the Things Network, is very much like a social networking feel. You have a forum, you have a section which is called the laboratory, where you encourage people to upload the products that they have made using this network. Can you talk a little bit about that, the case histories and also the response on the forum, how you're reaching out to the community to help you build this thing, or to extend it rather?
Yeah, so with thethingsnetwork.org, we made a place that it can really be a community-driven initiative. So we create some content ourselves, but we thought it was way more scalable to allow other members in the community to post their content and to teach others how to do it. If you look at the forum, it's very active. There's a few very active members that are highly involved with the whole community dynamics there, and that if people have questions, they find their way. So it's a really big self-sustaining community with regards to content. Of course, we do a lot of investments, and currently we fund that from our company called the Things Industries, where we provide consultancy and support and proprietary software components to build professional networks. And that is that's a bit of the model. And basically, what we did from the start is we allowed people to create communities for their cities, and that turned out to be quite a success, because now every community then has their own place, and then people can learn from each other, and there's a lot of synergy there.
Could you talk to us a little bit about a couple of the community members? Would that be permitted?
Yeah, sure. So we have our biggest community is in Zurich. It's run by Gonzalo. His success is really in the fact that from an early point start, he taught a lot of people how to build their own gateway, which is not that easy, but he created a community around that. So that's where there's a lot of gateways. And that grew out to something very big. Then we have Terry Moore in New York. He did very well in involving the government. So the President Borough, it's like a mayor of Manhattan, even has a Things Gateway on her desk. She has a great use case where they support use cases for social housing. In Berlin, we have Gerhard. He's super active and very passionate about setting up the network. They did something very cool. They are mapping the network, so they analyze the network coverage by putting a node in a taxi, right? So a taxi is constantly driving with a node, giving a good idea on what the coverage is in the city. So that's really cool. So then we have Hidetoshi in Japan, very actively supporting him from that side. In Sydney, we have Andrew Maggio. He's been involved from very early on, and really is an evangelist in Australia. And I think the one of the cool things there is that if you talk about how you build such a community, then it's really important that you have people that are local, because even within Europe, the cultural differences are huge. So when we started in Amsterdam, like Dutch people we just say we'll do it, right? We have we don't have really an Anglo-Saxon way of coping with liability and laws, and there's a lot of reasonability in the law. So we would just say do it, and then if somebody says okay, this is wrong, then we'll just pivot, and then we'll just fly along the way.
So sort of an agile way of operating.
Yeah, but when we then, for instance, talk to the first communities in the UK, we always get the first question: okay, what's the legal position? What's the good liable? So we're like, okay, yeah, it's like we don't want to think about this right now, right? Like this is just holding us back. And the same, I think, in Germany was also that we get a lot of people asking about what the government would think of this. And then we also said, yeah, I mean, show them, and then they can say something about it, and maybe you care, maybe you don't. So, and that is specific. And then if you look at the real laws, it's quite similar across the world. So, I mean, just as like everywhere around the world, people are setting up free Wi-Fi spots, right? Mm-hmm. So there's not really something that is really different. And then if you look at our manifest, for instance, if you look at local law, we will always comply, or if you tell us, we'll make sure it does, and we'll just move forward from there.
I have some questions from the ideaXme community. As you know, we sent out a heads up before this interview, and we had more than 4,000 views of that heads up across social, and lots of likes, and a couple of questions in. If I may, I'd like to read those questions, and they do relate to some of the things already discussed, namely security, but to do them justice, I'd like to read them out, if that's all right. The first one is from Yves Mulkers, Business Intelligence and Data Architect. He said it seems like a great idea. What does open mean in this context? Do you have to pay for the first access to the internet? Will it be a private free network separated from the regular internet? And then as a separate question, which relates to what you've just said, who will go over policies, regulations, and keep an eye on it all, presumably the whole security side of things. So those are the two aspects of his questions.
Yeah, so the open, in the open part of the Things Network is that we want to create an infrastructure that everybody can contribute to, according to the principles of the internet. So anybody, when the internet was founded, anybody was able to extend the internet if you joined the community, if you complied to a few simple rules, and that grew out like organically. And of course, then over time, a lot of governance came in and right when it became make it more stable and reliable. So if you look at open and free, open means that anybody can contribute to the network by building extra gateways, by setting up network servers, by adding content, by growing the network. The free means that more it's not like free in that it doesn't cost anything. Free means that it's is more highlights the as you say a free and open network that you can move freely, and that is something that over time, when the overhead costs increase, we'll need to set up sufficient governance and funding for that. At the moment, it's all driven because if you connect to the Things Network, you set up your own gateway, and the overhead costs are we can cope that with our business called the Things Industries, but we need to set up further governance and further funding to do that. There's a lot of models, a lot of organizations that have done this before us, like the ICANN or RIPE, or there's a lot of examples on the internet, and not really worried about that we won't follow that path. If you talk about security, most important thing here is that our Western perception on security at the moment is that we make sure that our data is safe. So it's a definition that comes from that a lot of citizens prefer end-to-end encryption. We now enable it in WhatsApp. You can enable it in Facebook. You can use an app called Signal. So end-to-end encryption, where the data is only seen at the device and at the endpoint. When you do internet banking, you enable end-to-end encryption, right? So only you see what you see on your screen, and then you see a little slot on your next to your URL, and then the bank can see it. And there is actually a secure connection between. So that is the definition of security we implement. There are non-Western definition of security that's more that that's maybe more applied in China or other countries, and they say that we have a government that is responsible for our security, so they should be able to see everything, so they can assure we're secure, right? So, we believe that this model, what we do, only can scale with the more Western way of implementing the Western definition of security. So we fully use the end-to-end encryption mechanism in the LoRaWAN protocol, and we believe that is really the way to go. To summarize, end-to-end encryption is what we apply. That means that the sensor node has the data, and that the backend of the application owner has the data, and then we're able to forward the packets over the network over unsafe or untrusted infrastructure, because nobody can access the data because it's encrypted. So basically that is that's our take on security. And this is actually how the open internet works, because you are sending all kinds of data and requests and emails, and that's also secured by end-to-end encryption.
I have a question from a second question from the ideaXme network from Dr. Adel Aniba. He's a senior lecturer in mobile computing from the University of Birmingham. The question relates to 5G and also competitors of LoRaWAN. What do you think about scalability and security issue for LoRaWAN? That's the first one.
I don't know about the security issue. The only thing that what we always advise with regards to security is to make sure that that this gets really technical, right? So you have this end-to-end encryption, but then you need to make sure that the keys end up in the device in a secure way. So most of this has been improved in LoRaWAN 1.1 specification, and it really has to do with the practice, how you implement it. So and this is an IoT broad issue, but there's a lot of vendors now coming onto market with products to securely provision the keys of your device. The scalability of LoRaWAN is basically embedded in the protocol because the devices always talk to the nearest gateway. And people talking about the potential scalability issue of LoRaWAN, they come from a telco paradigm and with a limited possibility to place base station and gateways. And that's not what LoRaWAN was made for. LoRaWAN was made for a abundance of gateways to facilitate a huge amount of devices. If you talk about the spectrum, there is a exponential effect in placing more gateways, which is actually, if you look at it from an investment point of view, very cheap. So one gateway can cost around $200 to $300. And what it does is that the closer devices to a gateway, the more efficiently it uses the spectrum. And in that way, placing extra gateways will create a huge amount of capacity. So, for instance, if you look at Zurich, the city of Zurich has 100 gateways, and Zurich is not a huge city, right? It's a medium-sized city. So that means that there are gateways everywhere. So this abundance of gateways in this deployment is solving that. And but yeah, if you would look at from a old telco thinking paradigm, then you might calculate that there's a scalability issue. But that's not how it is implemented or how LoRaWAN should be implemented.
How does LoRaWAN compare to Sigfox and Weightless is another question that Dr. Aniba would like to ask you.
Yeah, so Suitbox is a proprietary technology that licenses local businesses to set up network. It's a similar technology. The only thing is that it's closed, and you cannot extend the network yourself unless you have a license. And to actually have the devices running, you also need a license, and there's a fee. They're building a global network, which is great, and I think it's a great player in the same space, addressing a completely different need there, and it's really a matter between like how much do you want to pay on a monthly basis for your device, and what kind of service level do you want, and then based on that you can decide, like, do I want to go for Sigfox, do I want to go for LoRaWAN or something else. But yeah, it serves a different need because it really is an IoT service, and it gives you limited control of configuration.
How will LoRaWAN be affected by the introduction of 5G?
So 5G is a marketing term. if you look at the Giezeman definition of 4G, we don't yet have 4G, yet everybody says there's 4G. So assuming that 5G is high bandwidth picocells, and maybe also with something called narrowband IoT for some low power. At the moment, it's going at a very slow pace. Don't see a lot of real life use cases or prototypes on the market right now. But definitely that's going to be something that they're going to enter the market. It's going to be something interesting. Yet it serves a different segment. So probably a lot of companies that used to connect their sensors over 2G are going to move to narrowband IoT. It's really at the moment there's so little information about what it's really going to be, with also changing specifications and changing that it's really hard for me to say like what's that going to be. Besides from the PowerPoints that we see. Yet again, I think that LoRaWAN is a unique technology that operates in an open spectrum, and you really will find their niche in people that want to have full control over the quality of service and the level of security of their application.
What do you want to achieve over the next 2 years, and what are the barriers to achieving it?
So at the moment, all the tools are on the market. So we're like people like us, they like to throw technology at the market until it sticks, right? So the only way how it's going to stick is if people are going to create business cases and use cases that generate value. So that our main focus is on supporting anybody that wants to build a use case to do that, with knowledge, with tools, with software, with whatever you need. Both in a open source way and a commercial way, open source through the Things Network and commercially through the Things Industries, and just growing the market. That's the and really pushing the paradigm of building open Internet of Things.
How about fundraising? What are your objectives there?
So at the moment, we fund it ourselves through our business because we do quite a few consultancy projects, that kind of stuff, and and that is how we fund it right now. Where we're looking at a way where we support businesses better in getting the most out of the technology with a support subscription, and there are several models what we're going to look at funding that, and in that way creating more applications, and more applications need more coverage, and then you will have this vicious cycle of generating value and investing in the infrastructure in a more lean and more like opportunistic, reactive way than a very doing a telco way where you have a very large upfront investment.
Would you ever consider working with any of the larger corporations like Intel, for example?
We are working with companies like Intel,
okay.
So we have a huge partner base.
But in terms of partnerships?
Yeah, we have a lot of that. So we did a conference. We are actually creating the raw materials and the building blocks to build these applications. So both they benefit from us building content with their components, and also we benefit from them to make sure that there's some solid technology on the market.
Who owns the Things Network?
The Things Network is a foundation that's run by me and our co-founder Johan Stocking. We at the moment have full control over the foundation, but looking at broadening the governance. These models, if you look at how these models work, for instance, Linux has a so-called beneficiary dictatorship. Where the democracy is really determined by the content itself. So you will have a few strong leaders that determine the way, and they open up everything. So, for instance, with the Things Network, once you don't approve of the direction we're going, everybody's free to disconnect their gateway, run the open source themselves, and build a new version of the Things network and so-called fork it. Especially in a growth phase, these kind of governance models are very effective. Having a governance model where you will discuss plans every month with a group of 10, 20 people, I foresee that happening, but really like only within 5 or 10 years. And I'd rather like have the votes within the community on whether you contribute or not. And that is yeah. I mean, history also has shown these are the most effective models at this stage. And so, who owns the Things network? Then you first have to define what is the Things network. So everybody owns their own gateway. The Things network is a brand, is a platform. We own the brand and the platform, but we open up the source code. The source code is a common thing. So in the end, it's owned by everybody in that sense. And that is same question for the internet. Like, who owns the internet? There's nobody really owns the internet. That's the beauty of it.
It takes an enormous amount of drive and an incredible amount of hard work to get to this point in launching something new. I mean, a new company, a straightforward new company, let alone changing the way things are done, disrupting a market. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about your human story, who you really are. Where does this drive come from?
I think it's an entrepreneurial drive of creating something from nothing and doing something that really has some purpose. I'm a strong believer of open internet. I think it's one of the most beautiful things we've created as mankind, and I think we should apply these principles to the Internet of Things, where you now see that corporations are really tended to build silos instead of open platforms. So yeah, that's a really strong belief. For me, being an entrepreneur is that one of the biggest reasons for being an entrepreneur is that you can decide who you work with, and I think that's one of the biggest upsides of having your own business. So gathering people around you that have a similar mindset, that gives you a lot of joy as well. And second of all, I want to do something that is able to impact billions of people, right? So that is that is something that an open model also very allows you to do to make it go viral across the world and having a lot of fun along the way. And and then with a group of people that you really like. So that's a bit of sums up the drive, I think.
When did you develop a passion for technology? How young were you?
Yeah, I think I think I was at a very young age, tinkering with computers and doing some programming. Although I was never really a good programmer, but not at the level that we have people at the Things Network right now and a lot of the community members. But I think always that I give people ask or they have some career, ask for some career advice. Like when I was tinkering with stuff even at a young age, building a RC car, remote controlled, radio controlled car, or building a first website, I remember that I lost track of time, and I think always that if people are saying, hey, where maybe they're stuck in their career, I was like look at your childhood and what were you doing when you were just completely out of touch with time, and what was that you're doing, and then do this now, because or find a version of that. So I don't know if it's nurture or nature, but I know that they always had a lot of fun, like playing around with technology, and then somehow you end up doing that.
What were the most memorable things from your childhood that had the greatest impact on you?
With regards to technology,
Not necessarily so, no.
Huh?
Not necessarily technology, no.
So I think it was 95 or something so if it relates to this, then my dad we already had a computer with internet then, and then like the magic of downloading a first picture, or like a few years later, like getting an MP3 for free, and having this connected. I think that basically really was something that would highly impact the course of how it went further.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
Yes.
Are they interested in technology insofar as more than being consumers of technology?
Oh, they don't.
Do you share that with your father?
Yeah, he also has like doing new stuff, yeah, a bit, but not really specific, I think.
Did you have mentors as a student?
No, I don't think really as a student. Just people in school. I can't recall.
Later in life, during the course of your career, have you had mentors and advisors who've helped you move forward?
Yeah, definitely. When the working started, or when you start as an entrepreneur, you have to start looking for mentors. So yeah, my first business, we had a lot of people that were advising, and at the moment, I think that over time, as you're an entrepreneur, and if you're moving fast, you cannot go without.
Is there anything, a book, a documentary, anything outside other than people themselves that has helped you in moving forward? Is there a favorite book that you go back to?
Yes, that's actually, it's standing here. It's this book.
Can you bring it further into the screen?
Like this?
Ah, just listen.
It's not a very famous book, but for personal development, this was something that taught me that listening is something else than letting somebody finish talking. That's a really personal thing. That's something that I learned very late in my career. So that's why it was such an eye opener for me.
Are you mentoring anybody? Do you have time? Do you have time?
No, I think that's the part of a startup ecosystem. I think always when somebody asks for help, then the learning curves are so steep in the startup world. Your chances of success are very slim. So sometimes, helping out. So I'm a mentor at the Accelerator, and there are a few startups and few people that know how to find me. But and basically I think that's one of the one of the obligations you have, and it's fun to do, and to have if you want to make sure that this startup ecosystem really maintains. Especially in Amsterdam, it's really vibrant. It's grown very fast from almost nothing 10 years ago now, like a lot of startups. So yeah, we should foster that ecosystem.
Out of everybody that you could meet in the world, dead or alive, who would you most like to meet, and what question would you like to ask that person?
Yeah, I think they will end up in something very cliche like Steve Jobs or Elon Musk, I guess. I never thought of this like this. No, I don't know really.
Cliched is fine.
Yeah, yeah, there's so much written about Steve Jobs. So like, what do we want to ask him? You don't want to bother him as well, right?
Go for it. Think of a
Uh,
question.
yeah, yeah. No, I don't. I don't think it would be him. No, I don't know. I don't know. I don't. I think with this kind of stuff, it's not. No, no, nothing pops to mind.
I'm sure if he was still with us, he'd really like to meet you, given given all the successes so far and your plans for the future. It sounds incredible. Before we go, can we have a few words of inspiration for future technology entrepreneurs, or really anyone setting out on a path, a journey to create their big idea? It takes an enormous amount of work and stamina to keep going and driving the thing forward. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I think that that the most so there's not a magic bullet, but if there is, it has to do something with that. Um, that if you're gonna do this and invest a lot of time in something that is highly likely to fail, at least have fun along the way, and that means that you have to do something that is really close to what is like really close to your personal energy. So of course there's always tasks that are not something within your comfort zone and you're just not good at. But yeah, if you're in it for the long run, I would definitely advise everybody to look closely at themselves and check if if this is something they want, because in the end you have to at least you have to stick in for very long, and even when times get rough, you should have at least some points that you're still having a good time. So I think that's the most important thing, because in the end you won't. So whatever it's technology, or maybe you're just really passionate about just making money, you should definitely just go like pursue something that has something to do with that. But yeah, that's really personal.
Wienke Geizeman, co-founder of the Things Network, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.